All right, let's go ahead and get started. It's great to be here. Southern California, sunny Southern California. I'm actually out next to Jeff Willinger's pool right now. It's great to be able to tap into what's happening around the world and be able to kind of be connected with people in these crazy times. This particular session is one that I started a while back trying to think about what are the things that companies can do to prepare for Project Cortex. And as well, I think there's a lot of people who, you may have seen Naomi's and Chris McNulty's session and been wondering, can you slow it down a little bit? Can you give us a little bit more context? What is all this about? And so in this session, I want to kind of position a lot of what's happening with Project Cortex for those of you who may be new to it, but also be able to kind of help position it a little bit in preparing for Project Cortex. So yeah, welcome to the conference. I think a lot of people are excited about this. SPC in Vegas is absolutely the ultimate experience, and wish I was there with you. I appreciate the sponsors who are doing a lot in this time, and those who are on the front lines, those who are needing meals or those who are out of work. There's a number of companies that are helping out. United Way is a good example of that. International Medical Corps is essentially going to areas of the world where there isn't medical facilities or medical help, and they're helping out countries. I heard they're actually working in Libya right now. It's incredible the work that International Medical Corps is doing as well. So a little bit about myself, just to introduce myself. I'm a director at Proficient, which is a consulting company. I'm a Microsoft MVP and RD in the Office Apps and Services. Been working in the SharePoint, Microsoft Teams space, collaboration for long time. I've been doing intranet since the 90s. I've been doing SharePoint since the year 2000. Even before it was called SharePoint, I was working with Tahoe and Office Web Server. And we live in a fantastic community. It's great to connect with you, of those of you who are around the world. And I know we're kind of stressing Microsoft Teams with this event. I'm excited to be on the organizing committee with the other user group leaders and MVPs here, as well as those around the world who are pulling this thing off. It's an incredible opportunity. I've got a tech blog called collabshow.com, and I have a travel blog called travelingepic.com, where I share my stories and pictures around the globe. I've been on this quest to go to every country in the world. You may or may not have heard about that story. I actually got held up. I would have had 20 countries left, but now I've still got 24 because my last trip got canceled because of all this. I know you're saying first world problems. I totally understand. We do have speakers from all over the globe, and it's great to connect with those people. Proficient as well, the company I work for, has actually been very involved in kind of what's happening with technology on the front lines. They just got a award from Microsoft called the Microsoft Health Innovation Award from some of the work we've been doing in relation to health, some of our health solutions related to the technology we provide. Now, let's talk a little bit about this Project Cortex. Project Cortex, it's basically taking artificial intelligence, machine learning, machine teaching, natural language processing. All of these technologies are kind of converging, and Microsoft's bringing it into the enterprise. I kind of like to think of this as democratization of AI. Usually it's the developers who are building solutions that tap into AI solutions, and you've got to have a lot of money and a lot of data. But the way that Project Cortex is set up, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have a massive environment to still take advantage of this. You basically have, in this Project Cortex, I like to kind of think of it as two sides of the brain. There's the knowledge center, and we're going to dig into what that is. But essentially the knowledge center, which lives in SharePoint, does the clustering, extracting, grouping, filtering. I think of this as the Wikipedia of the organization. This is where you can follow your topics. It's where you can kind of see who's contributing to what topics and understanding what's happening in the enterprise. And a lot of this happens automagically with validation. So essentially you are reinforcing the topics, saying yes, 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 no, let me correct this, you got this right, no, that connection isn't wrong, is wrong. So there's a lot of that reinforcement that administrators are doing. And these could be admins, they could be experts, but essentially there's an important element of this, which is reinforcement. The other side of this is the machine teaching, and you saw a lot of that at the end of what Naomi was just doing in that last keynote. It's the classifying, modeling, organizing, categorizing of these AI models and building your automation with the Power Platform with the results that come out of that classifying and categorization and extraction as well. That happens in the content center. Now the content center as well lives in SharePoint. Now, if we back up a little bit and we say, what is all this? Why are we doing all this? This is the Mott MacDonald case study that you saw in that keynote. Their goal was to connect people to data and data to people, or connect people to knowledge and vice versa, connecting knowledge to people. And this idea of being able to connect people in this way helps bring it together. So let me even kind of back up and say there's problems in the enterprise that this solution absolutely is trying to address. And essentially, what I'm trying to say is these are the big things that even Microsoft is saying that they're trying to address. And as an example, it's the silos of information. You've got data that's in SharePoint, file shares, you know, your Lotus Notes or your same time or quick time or whatever. You know, there's all these systems of record, and then you've got your systems of engagement. And it's not even just system to system. Your project data is separate from your collaboration data. You know, there's a lot of separations of data in these silos, but even within a repository, this is HR data, this is the finance data, this is IT data, and even within those repositories, it's this team versus that team. So there's not good visibility across these, and they create ultimately silos, whether it's permissions wise or whether it's simply there's no connection and you can't discover or be aware of what that stuff is. And that obviously does add to the next problem, which is around reuse of documents and code and so on. But that ability to search and find answers. You have a really good template, or you did a really good project, you want to be able to leverage that project for templates or be able to take snippets out of it and reuse it. And there's as well, like what's happening inside the organization as it relates to a single topic. Your ability to kind of gather and collect data is a real problem. And your ability to kind of tie all that knowledge together where you can explore it. There's a lot of power in that. And these knowledge gaps. There's tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge. And I'll talk about the differences there a little bit. But this idea of being able to find experts, making it easier for individuals and groups to share information. And a lot of that, you'd say, well, we've got tools that are for sharing information, but they share it once and then what? It's in a repository and it gets lost again. And you want to be able to connect these things around relevancy. And it's like search has continued to fail us, but how do we solve this ability to gather this data? Now, When you start talking about people, there's a steep ramp up for new employees, and there's a knowledge drain from the people who are leaving your organization, people who are retiring, or people who, you know, they work there for a couple of years and they take all this knowledge that they gained and they're losing it. Now, I mentioned knowledge and that there's a kind of a couple types of knowledge. There's explicit knowledge, where this is the stuff that's written down. It's captured in documents and records and files. Even if it's in a file cabinet, it's explicit knowledge. And then there's this knowledge that's in people's heads, the cultural knowledge, the tribal knowledge, the experience and thinking and competence, commitments. You know, it's that value and trust kind of stuff, but as well in a business environment. These are the things where, hey, you'll learn how this really works in 6 months, and then it'll just become second nature. How do you bridge that gap and make it so that the person who's coming in can be connected to that knowledge? How do you capture that? I've been in an IT team even where it's like, Joel, you're not documenting enough. It's like, you can troubleshoot so much faster than these other guys. How can you capture that knowledge so that just create more troubleshooting guides? We need more troubleshooting guides. It's like, I've built all these troubleshooting guides. I don't know if it's search that's failing or what, but there's so much knowledge that ends up stuck in your head. And absolutely, people are the most valuable resource, and what they hold is absolutely useful, but it needs to be shared. How do we share and connect that knowledge? Information is absolutely power. And there's been an evolution. You could say where we were with keyword-based search, semantic search and indexing, the natural language processing, all these things that have kind of helped to build and bring us closer and closer to future solutions that make it easier and better for search. Absolutely, the world's getting better. This ability to kind of tap on to AI and start building connections and relationships between our data, extracting data, absolutely, this is the way to get it done. And it building this amazing knowledge network. A lot of people, if you were to say, what is Project Cortex? In a very simple statement. In fact, you could say 2 words. It's knowledge network. So this idea of this network of topics that's connected to your content, that's connected to experts, that's connected to the team sites and the SharePoint sites and the meetings and the messages that are going out, not just emails, but chats and so on. The ability to kind of pull that together into this structure of a knowledge network. That absolutely is the power. And when Lou Platt from HP says, if HP only knew what HP knows, it would be 3 times more productive. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about. Absolutely, this is the ability to build this network for our organization so we can have true organizational knowledge and IP that helps us be more productive. And when we say knowledge management, it's 3 simple things. It's capturing, distributing, and consuming or using that knowledge. So this idea of, you know, what we've been doing and continue to do is we create, collect, and classify in a manual way. And then we go and distribute that knowledge in books or in packages and white papers and blue books and run books and so on. And we share that knowledge, but obviously it's getting old and it has a hard time getting updated. But we then consume it, reuse it, enhance it, and it goes back through that entire process. And that's knowledge management in a nutshell. So what is this Project Cortex? This is a Microsoft slide. I'm not going to dive into this so much, but there's a couple of key words I want you to take away from these. One of them is it's about empowering people with the apps they use every day. It's not every day that Microsoft updates Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and ties those things together with what's happening in SharePoint, with what's happening in Teams. Project Cortex is tying all these things together so that these topics really kind of help work together to build this knowledge network. And the fact that it's automatically connecting teams and systems automatically across this knowledge, across the organization, connecting experts to people and knowledge to people in this hero destination, which is the knowledge center. And we can go back into what the knowledge center is, but you'll see it in a demo in a second. And then we're managing and protecting the content with AI. And you saw Naomi building all these cool rules. Chris was talking about it as well, how you can actually use this ability to extract, classify, organize, being able to categorize your content, your forms, your documents, your images, your videos, building models with the Power Platform, building AI models to do that categorization. And that center is called the Content Center, another hero destination, which as well has reusable web parts and so on. So in a nutshell, or in a very high level view, you get this picture of you've got your content that is then reasoned over by AI, which generates topic pages and knowledge centers, which those topics are then exposed across Office, Outlook, SharePoint, Teams, and so on. As you use those apps every day, those acronyms are only a click away to get the definition and to be able to then do further research on simple topics as well. So I'm going to jump into a quick demo just to kind of help you understand the difference between the Knowledge Center and the Content Center, because these are two very different experiences. And when people think of Cortex, Project Cortex, they're thinking of one or the other. And I absolutely think that a quick way to understand this is when you start out using Project Cortex, you're very likely going to focus on the Knowledge Center because it's a lot easier to kind of work with in a simple way. And the other thing you're going to do here is, there we go, that's funny, is the Content Center, which is something that's a little bit more advanced. It's where you're training the AI, and there's a lot of value in that as well. So one of the first URLs you should know about Project Cortex is the aka.ms/Project Cortex, and you'll see that link in pretty much everything that Microsoft shares as well. Don't be discouraged when you see this form. A lot of people stop and they say, oh, okay, learn more. Well, the demos themselves and the resources are actually below the form. So these are kind of hidden a little bit. There's the Mont McDonald case study. There's a fantastic video that Naomi did at Ignite last year at the Microsoft Mechanics Live. These demos I'm going to show you are absolutely available to you as well. So the first one we're going to do is the Knowledge Center. And the Knowledge Center, like I was going to say, I kind of think of it as the organizational Wikipedia, but you'll kind of see this. Here we are in Outlook, right? So this is mail, this is email. And when I click core, I get a topic card, because I don't know what core means. You know, I might be new to the team. And here, on here, I can actually see, I can follow it, I can edit it. There's a definition of the acronym. There's some experts down here. The AI itself has basically generated this, and it was approved by a human. It was validated. If we dig into the folders, which are stored in SharePoint, you can see as well, if I scroll down here on this modern SharePoint site. Yep, here we are. So we're on a modern SharePoint page, and you can see we have construction operations reliability, which is a topic. That's also the acronym, but it doesn't have to always be acronyms. These can be projects, they can be customer names, they can be terms that are important to your industry. And as an example, we click on this and we get another topic card. But instead of just scrolling down the topic card, this time we're actually going to click through, and it takes us into the Knowledge Center. Now, for those SharePoint people who are listening to my voice, I want you to understand SharePoint online is where the Knowledge Center lives. This is, this is SharePoint on steroids now, because here's this enhancement to SharePoint Online. It's pretty amazing enhancement as well. but we can jump in to see topics. These are my topics, the ones my colleagues are working on. I can look at the organization, but you can see there's a lot going on. What is dark mode? Well, it's a project and there's 76 comments on it with a bunch of people following it, and people recently edited some things, and I get some analytics around what's happening in my organization. The analytics themselves are valuable to know what topics are relevant right now. Imagine being a new employee and being able to say, hey, I am really interested in these topics. You know, I've done a lot of research, or there's these communities of practice, these centers of excellence. Imagine what you could do if you had a knowledge center to be able to then contribute and talk to people across the organization. And check this out. Lynn Robbins has actually been, she's been using some gamification. You can see she's a top 10 contributor to some specific topics here. She's been answering questions, she's been sharing topics, and as well, when we go in here to the Knowledge Center, we edit the page, and you can see we can actually add these additional web parts. So here's some additional SharePoint goodness that we can then leverage on our topic pages. Expertise Finder and feeds and the Knowledge Graph Viewer, where we can work our way across the knowledge graph. Really powerful stuff. And there's even some learning. Imagine people who are trying to ramp up and catch up to where the experts are. Go take some training courses. You know, this personalized training with LinkedIn Learning. Powerful stuff. All right. So that was the first one. And you can see there's even more of these demos in here. I do want to give you one of the Content Center demos as well. So let's go back. Remember I said it was aka.ms/Project Cortex. And that will take us to basically this Microsoft resource tech community where Microsoft has tried to pull all of the best stuff on Project Cortex all into one place. We get some nice stuff. All right, we scroll down, got to go past the form to where the demos and videos and stuff are. Come on. Any second now. Is it going to let us go? Okay, while that is loading, I'm going to just show you some other stuff I've been working on. I just recently published a Project Cortex infographic where I tried to essentially capture these two worlds of the machine learning knowledge center side of the things, as well as the machine teaching side of things. And then where these two worlds converge, you've got the human, where they can validate or manage, set up blocks. You know, you can as well set up like reserved words or blocked terms. You know, you want to make sure people don't create naughty words or whatever. You can actually control those lists. And if you want to, you can actually seed the topics directly as new topics with a taxonomy, like an industry taxonomy, or even acronyms. If you've got a list of your organization's acronyms, it's a great place to start. Make sure that you leverage the new acronyms part of search. I've added some other additional stuff around like business value. In fact, I'm actually doing a Project Cortex business value webinar, but I'm also covering some of this tomorrow at the same exact time. But tomorrow here at this event, the Microsoft 365 virtual marathon, I'm covering this as well with somebody from WAND, where we're going to dig into some more of the business value side of things. So let's see if we can, yeah, all right, it finally loaded. Oh, come on. Okay, sorry about that. So we're going to click on demos again. And there's a new one called Content Capture. I don't know if you guys have seen this. But this is actually a really good one because it goes a lot deeper into the categorization aspects of this, the extraction, the ability to kind of add metadata, and a lot of that jazz. So there's a lot of goodness there. I don't know if it doesn't want to cooperate or what the deal is, but we may come back to this. Let's do that. So high level, when you start talking about business value, it's highlighting topics in SharePoint, Teams, modern SharePoint. In fact, there's actually a distinction here. It's not that Classic doesn't work with Project Cortex. Classic absolutely will be indexed, and you can build your topics based on Classic, but the UI that lights up, there's some hesitation around Classic where eventually I think Classic is going to be supported, but let's just say that it's been one of the areas that's been a little bit in flux. It started out where it was going to be just supporting modern, but I think there's been a lot of pushback. So we'll see how that turns out. But as well, even in Word, you're using Word, you're consuming Word. Here's a little topic card right inside of Word, and it pops out on the side as kind of a little card type thing. Here's your people and resources and experts related to Project Core. So when we say, well, what is it actually doing? It's extracting, grouping, clustering, filtering. So a simple, like our core, constructions, operations, reliability, it found a definition in the content. It understands the acronym core is the same thing. It found an expert, Lee Gu, and there's related files and sites that both experts can pin or suggest or validate. And then there's related topics as well. Now, I mentioned some of the gamification and the expert side of this. The profiles part of this is a big piece. And in fact, my recommendation is if one of the most important things you can do to prepare for Project Cortex, I believe, is to make sure your profiles are good. So I'm talking about pictures being populated. I'm talking about trusted, verifiable data. If people don't trust the data in your profiles, it's going to be a mess. People are going to say, I don't know if that's the right person in the right role because that stuff is legacy or it's dated. Absolutely, you need to scrub and update and build a trusted, verified profile experience. Now, if we dig in a little bit here, I want you to look at this. You can see a few hints things in this. So as an example, there's a new section we already had about Ask Me About, but now we have this ability to add topics. So these things they're adding are topics that people can then navigate as well. And then by them adding those things as topics that they care about or that they know about, it can actually start to build the connections between the people and the knowledge. And that's part of that goal. And here we have as well, you update your profile, keep your topics up to date. Is this topic still relevant? So it's actually kind of helping you work through those topics. Strengthen your profile by adding topics you're working on, kind of that ability to kind of work with the user to populate good things. Your users aren't going to spend much time in profiles if they don't trust them or if they don't think that the stuff is relevant. So preparing for Project Cortex, make sure your profiles are good. Here's a little snippet about the Knowledge Center. We already looked at that in the demo. Something you didn't see, but Naomi did touch on this, the ability to actually interact with a knowledge bot as part of Teams. So not only will things highlight in a conversation based on them being valid topics, but if you're having a conversation, you have a really good exchange, you can say, hey, add this topic, hey bot, knowledge bot, add this topic to construction operations reliability as questions and answers. So there's a little questions and answers section in your topics that can be populated with content from Teams or from Yammer Q&A, the new Yammer stuff. The Content Center, which we're going to get to when that demo loads, basically here we've got the Accounting Content Center. You can see you can add a document library. As an example, you've got these POs. You start up the AI builder, create a model, that kind of thing, to then teach it. The other thing here is we've got search connectors. So just because, Microsoft 365 is this Microsoft ecosystem, it doesn't stop there. We can actually pull in data from ServiceNow or MediaWiki or Salesforce or your intranet that's built on a custom set of modules, an intranet website, or built in HTML. You got your file shares. Your ability to build against an ingestion API is in preview, and the indexing API is in private preview, the query API is in public beta. There are hundreds of partners that are waiting for Microsoft to say, our search connectors have launched. So you can kind of see here 7 search connectors that Microsoft's been working on, but these things are all designed to be extensible. So you can build your own, or partners who've already built a ton of connectors can then hook those in to where now AI is reasoning over that data, not just the data in SharePoint and Teams and Exchange online. And what does this kind of look like? This is a nice little Microsoft slide from around what the Project Cortex architecture looks like. So you think about it, where users are discovering knowledge is in the tools they're using every day across SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, Outlook, Word, and so on, Word. And then we have what is Project Cortex when you kind of think of what it is, those knowledge centers and the content center. The knowledge center contains topic pages and topic cards, which connects to graph and AI and all the different connectors and capture and leveraging AI Builder for automation and machine learning and classification and so on. I've kind of sorted out what are the different things that are going on in Project Cortex. The Knowledge Center lives in SharePoint. It has topic pages and web parts. The Content Center, which is explicit knowledge, integrates with Power Apps. It's your AI Builder, your Forms Builder, your Power Automate stuff. So it's the whole Power Platform, but it lives in SharePoint. Then there's knowledge capture, where you're capturing that tacit knowledge, the cultural tribal knowledge. And that stuff happens in Teams and Yammer, where we're having our conversations and engagement with with fellow employees or with the experts. Then we have the search connectors, like the Azure search connectors, as well as the ones we talked about with file shares and Azure Data Lake and all that kind of jazz. As well, we have knowledge insights that come right out of the tools we use every day, like the smart lookup inside of Word or in Office Online, as well as the SharePoint and Teams stuff that gets highlighted in even Outlook as well. And then we've got kind of a visual here of what happens inside of Project Cortex, where it is a bit of a cycle, where AI reasons over your data, it recognizes text in your images, it's doing content recognition, content extraction out of videos and content and audio. The data is actually mined out of it and extracted based on what it's been taught with the AI models, and Microsoft Graph as well gets enhanced. The topic is then recommended, like they could be projects, terms, products, processes, acronyms, and so on. And then experts validate those. They're curated, validated. Absolutely, security is part of this, so you can security trim. It absolutely honors what the security is set up inside of SharePoint, as an example. The topics are organized into the Knowledge Center, and those topics that then exist or are approved are highlighted in those productivity tools we were talking about earlier. So a big part of what I wanted to show you guys today is things that you can do to prepare for Project Cortex. And I've kind of divided those things up into 3 major buckets. There's like tactical things you can do, like moving from classic to modern UI, doing things in search, like populating acronyms, enabling Microsoft Search if you haven't done that, rolling out essentially Microsoft Search at a base level that you can then build on and then leveraging a more solid enterprise information architecture with hubs, even Teams. I think a lot of people kind of let Teams be this new wild, wild west that was SharePoint, but a little bit of structure with Teams can go a long way too, especially with dynamic groups as an example. And I'm actually doing a webinar next week on groups, Microsoft 365 groups, but also security groups, kind of an end-to-end groups webinar. Trusted user profiles like updating building maps. Did you realize that building maps is a feature that has actually shipped? So if we were able to increase the profiles, we can actually gather more and more good data, phone numbers, department data, office location. There's a lot of that garbage that's actually an Active Directory that's just legacy. What are some things we can do to, even from a security perspective, there's ways to drive this and say, you know what, it's a security concern of, we don't know who's in building 11. If building 11 starts on fire, how do we go and address that? Or think about it now, you've got all these remote employees. Do you know where they are? What if you needed to know in terms of what cities they're in? Remote office, how do you support them if they have needs? There's absolutely some of this data that can be used for physical security, facilities, and so on. To the data cleanup of the retention, archiving, deleting, expiring, locking, so on. Just cleaning up your data. You know, trying to think of the right word, but essentially this cleanup process, sanitization, data sanitization. You know, you want good data, trusted data. The team and site classification can go a long way. When you start thinking about sensitive data that may be stored in SharePoint or stored in some of these other repositories, you absolutely can say, exclude the sensitive data from Project Cortex. You want this to be primarily focused on public data that can help people access knowledge and leverage the knowledge. So you may want to classify your data and then understand where you want to point Project Cortex as an example. Think about unified labeling or unified groups around sensitivity, retention, even DLP. You don't want to be having AI reasoning over personnel content for any reason. You know, that sensitive documents, it doesn't need to be looking at that. Other things you can do for planning, roles and responsibilities. Who's going to own this thing? How do we support Project Cortex? What if it, you know, isn't working? How do we actually train it? And where is our good data? You know, if we want to train it on valid enterprise content types, who knows that stuff? Who's touched the managed metadata in such a long time? Microsoft is making this thing much, much more robust with the ability to leverage it around your business processes. But if you haven't touched the managed metadata in 4 or 5 years and it's just sitting out there stale, or maybe it's been 10 years, are there some data policies? Are there file plans and taxonomy? One project I'm not going to tell you to do is go out and feel like you have to go and tag everything. That's the opposite of what you need to do. You don't need to go and tag everything. Essentially, I'm just saying, think about it from a taxonomy perspective. Are there taxonomies already in your enterprise or industry taxonomies that you can trust or that you can start with, that you can actually seed to Project Cortex, that it can actually understand, here's a list of our customers. If you find any of these across data, that's absolutely relevant because we want to build a structure around customers or around projects or around acronyms. Those are absolutely things that make a lot of sense. And we work our way down into the Discover part of this. Enterprise retention information policies. Absolutely, you know, you want to make sure that you've got data policies in place. Departmental structured data, semi-structured documents, you're talking POs, but what about other records that it could be finding that are out there, like statement of works, receipts, different types of business data that's applicable to your business, where if you could do some automation around it, Project Cortex can actually do a great job of helping build automation on top of it. And as well, you got things like enterprise forms, digital work streams. There's alignment even with green initiatives. We're talking about leveraging AI. This is a huge reason why you might want to move off of paper to digitize, or even digital processes that are fairly archaic who haven't been really touched in a long time. AI has gotten so much better. There's a lot of reasons why you can actually start digitizing more, consolidating, doing migrations. There's a number of reasons. People have said, okay, now all my data is in SharePoint, now what? Now you have an answer for that. Project Cortex, we're going to build the knowledge network. We're actually going to tie our experts to the people and vice versa. We're going to build this incredible knowledge network inside of our organization. So let me see if I can go back to that, see if it'll actually work for us this time. All right, content capture with Project Cortex. So here we are looking at a content center. Now in context, again, two sides of the brain, one being the knowledge center, which is our organizational Wikipedia. The other side of the world, the content center, which is the training part of this. You can see we have a list of models down here. We also have the content center, which is our home for Project Cortex for around managing content processes and automating the metadata side of things. So let's jump down here. Now here we are looking at contracts, okay? Now we've got add from library, label examples, the new entity extractor, and even the ability to apply a model. So we can build new libraries. We can teach a label example of how to classify content. So we've got the classifiers up here. We can create a new entity extractor where it understands how to pull values out of documents. And we're talking things like Word, where they're very unstructured. It can actually learn how to pull things out of a contract. So let's start here with the add from library. And then let's create a new entity extractor. All right, so here we are training a new type of contract. This is a services agreement. It found these relevant terms. It's actually looking at these terms. It's highlighted this text as a type of contract. These are services agreement contracts. You can see we've got an accuracy number over here. So we want to select services, set contracts. Let's go ahead and look at agreement. So you can see here's a phrase list. There's a number of different types of our ability to do these extractors. You can, as an example, phrase, or maybe location of the document and so on. You can say whether it's case sensitive or not, but let's like select this. Let's deploy it to some libraries, all right. Okay, let's publish this model we've built around classifying. Yes, you can see that's even a SharePoint address. Let's now upload some contracts. Let's pull a sample of them to do the training on. And we've got a bunch of them. And you can see company name, value, type, services, and so on. It's extracting that data out. Here's another document. We can see it has many sections in this document. Doesn't matter about fonts and all that kind of stuff. Look at this. We've got our metadata now extracted out of these contracts. Now, before, full text search is the best we could have done with those Word docs. Now we can actually do filtering, sorting, and we can actually work with our data so much more, where we can say, hey, sort it by the contract value. Now go assign those to this salesperson. You're working with large enterprises, you're working with small business, and you can actually see how the business value is here immediately in being able to gather this data right out of these documents. We click on a single document, you can see we've got the metadata right in the document as well, and it's been captured. And there's a lot more as well. So I encourage you to go out to that aka.ms/Project Cortex. Now let's head back. Just about out of time here. Oops. Yep. So anyway, hopefully that gave you a nice taste of what's in Project Cortex. And I do have, let me see, I've got about 5 minutes for questions. I will open up my little panel here. And if anybody has questions, I'm going to open it up for questions. So go ahead and use the Q&A panel. And I understand that this is a little bit wacky. I'm actually going to put it back on my video. So hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to see and not as kind of confusing here. Let's split this back to my video. 1 second. Welcome to Teams live events, right? Okay, Q&A. I'm showing now the Q&A. How did you create the gauge visualization? Any plans from Microsoft to add visualization? You know, I'm not exactly sure. I do know that analytics is absolutely one of the things they're planning on shipping. The next question is around accessibility. What is this going to be fully accessible to people with disabilities? Will the experience be the same? If you understand how Project Cortex relates to SharePoint and how it kind of exposes itself in that, I think that there's a lot of work they're going to be doing. I expect that the Word part of it is going to be probably even more accessible than the SharePoint side of it. But I would encourage you to walk through those demos if you can, and try and get feedback to Microsoft related to accessibility. But absolutely, accessibility is a major goal of Microsoft these days. Next question is, does everyone work well with Power BI? Are there any known connectors with Tableau? Can it share connections with the same data source? So Tableau is not one of the 7 data sources, but it is one of the things that it does relate with, if that makes sense. Now let me see as well. You had a reference to Kofax and Effisoft in one of your slides. Isn't this a competitor to these products? Now, the reason I mentioned Kofax and Effisoft, a lot of this is those products are primarily around capture. Those are capture products that do extraction as well. So often when I think about Kofax, I think about projects where people may be doing faxes and working with structured data. So working with those teams around where there's already some extraction going on, you can find out how much the company is already doing with structured data, and it might actually give you some ability to do some prototypes or proof of concepts with Project Cortex. And it's not that it only, I would say that there's a number of differences, especially with your ability to work with very unstructured content, where a lot of the stuff that you get with Kofax and Effisoft are very structured documents. What is the licensing related to Cortex? So licensing essentially is not going to be E3. That's what we know. So this isn't going to come as just be part of your typical SharePoint SKU. It is going to be additive. And the question is, well, what is it going to be on top of E3? Microsoft hasn't shared those numbers yet or shared that data with us. Are we going to have a connector for Azure SQL? I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised. It really depends on Microsoft, and I think that they are interested in hearing from customers around what connectors we'd like to see next. Project Cortex related to language. Absolutely. So Project Cortex does have the ability to reason over data. It doesn't just have to be English. It can understand multiple languages. I don't know what languages it's going to support out of the box or what it's going to start with. That's about all the time I have. I've really enjoyed this time with you. Feel free to join me tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel, here at Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. And thanks everybody for joining me. I've really enjoyed the dialogue, lots of great questions. Thanks a lot. See you later.